But his mother-in-law shared details of a chilling phone conversation with her daughter the morning of her murder.
The first thing she said on the phone was, "Mom, I love you. You're my best friend." And I didn't know what's going on. I said, "I love you too, and you're a good friend of mine."
But there was more.
She says, I just want to let you know, Rick is a mess today. And I just wish I had said, "Well, if he's such a mess, why don't you come to my house? We'll have breakfast."
How a Fitbit Solved a Murder. The story of the life and death of Connie Margotta Dabate. Connie Margotta Dabate was born on July 31, 1976, in Rockville, Connecticut. She was the youngest child of Kenneth and Cindy Margotta. Her brother Keith would later say that he still remembered the day their father brought him to the hospital to see his baby sister for the first time. From that moment, she was the light of their world. This is the story of the life and death of Connie Margotta Dabate. She graduated from Ellington High School in 1995 and earned her undergraduate degree from the University of Connecticut in 1999. Friends described her as someone who threw herself into life with infectious enthusiasm. Connie got involved in any activity that was happening. After university, she built an impressive career in pharmaceutical sales. She worked for several companies before joining Reckitt Benckiser as a pharmaceutical sales rep. In later years, Connie excelled in her job and became well known and respected in her field. She worked hard and built an impressive career in pharmaceutical sales. Her LinkedIn profile would later show that she was consistently in the top 20% of the company, and it earned her 3 President's Club awards. She wasn't just successful, she was passionate about her work and took pride in being a resource for the physicians and pharmacists she served. In addition to her achievements, Connie's greatest joy came from her family. After dating for several years, on July 4, 2003, she married the love of her life, Richard Dabate, a computer network administrator. Richard was 2 years younger than Connie and had quite a different personality. Connie was outgoing and warm, and Richard was more withdrawn. Connie was a people person. Richard was more reserved and technical. But despite their differences, it appeared that opposites were attracted. After their marriage, the couple settled into their 4-bedroom colonial-style home at 7 Birchin Drive in Ellington, which is worth around $634,000 at today's market prices. Time went by, and soon their family grew with the arrival of 2 sons, Richard Jr., known as RJ, born in 2006, and Connor, born in 2009. Connie's proudest accomplishment was being a loving and devoted mother and a support in their neighborhood. Connie had earned the nickname Sunshine. She was actively involved in the Ellington Ambulance Corps, where she served as vice president for many years. She organized fundraisers and delivered meals to sick neighbors, and was always the first to volunteer when help was needed. Neighbors described Connie as someone who made their community feel like a family. To those looking from the outside, the Dabates seemed to have it all. They lived in their beautiful home, both had successful careers, with Connie being the primary breadwinner, and they were raising 2 healthy children. Friends described the children as happy boys. They appeared to be a normal couple with the typical marital disagreements that most couples experience, often centering around money and spending habits. But as investigators would later discover, beneath this perfect facade lay a web of deception that would ultimately lead to unimaginable betrayal. Whilst the Dabate family appeared happy from the outside, there were red flags that all was not well. Those closest to Connie began to notice. She seemed to struggle at times, even depressed, which was unlike her. Richard seemed to be absent from the home and social activities more often. Investigators soon uncovered a tale straight out of a soap opera. Richard admitted to an affair with a woman he had known since high school, rekindled in 2014 after her divorce. According to him, he and Connie had wanted another child but couldn't conceive, so this longtime friend agreed to act as a surrogate. The plan, he claimed, was that all three of them would raise the child together. At first, they discussed artificial insemination, but ultimately chose a more traditional approach, one that resulted in a pregnancy. However, much later, Richard confessed that Connie did not know about the affair, nor of the baby, which he then described as an unplanned outcome. When Richard learned about the pregnancy, he assured his mistress, Sarah, that he was planning to divorce Connie. Eventually, Richard began to make excuses for why he couldn't leave his wife. Trying to win him over to leave his wife, Sarah regularly sent Richard romantic text messages, including a photo of herself in lingerie with the message, "I'm ready for you, big boy." But Richard was deluded. He was living in two worlds. The very day before Connie sent that intimate message, he texted Sarah to assure her that he and his wife had talked about the divorce and were on the same page. 2 days later, he told Sarah they were getting a slow-moving divorce to make it easier on the kids. Friends and family confirmed that Connie said she never spoke about getting divorced. If anything, she seemed committed to working through whatever problems they were having. State police would later interview nearly 20 witnesses, and most said the same thing. Connie never mentioned divorce, though some noted she seemed stressed about Richard's spending habits. What Connie did know, however, was that something in her life was causing her significant anxiety. On the morning of December 23rd at 8:58 a.m., she would send a Facebook message to a psychotherapist requesting a hypnosis appointment because she said that a lot is going on right now. She never got the chance to keep that appointment. Richard, meanwhile, was feeling the pressure from all sides. His cousin Laurie Gardner would later testify that at a party in summer 2015, Richard had confided in her about Sarah's pregnancy. He was worried about what his family would think and feared becoming the black sheep of the family. His best friend, Seth Robertson, said Richard had voiced concerns about divorce. They both believed that men were at a disadvantage and that women typically kept the house and custody of the children. The walls were closing in on Richard Dabate. Sarah was 7 months pregnant with his child and growing frustrated with his empty promise. Richard's finances were becoming strained, and a divorce would mean losing everything. He would lose the comfortable lifestyle he'd built upon Connie's successful career. Not only that, but he would face the prospect of custody battles, alimony payments, and the social embarrassment of his infidelity being exposed to his friends and family. Something had to give. Richard is about to make a choice that would destroy multiple lives forever. December 23rd, 2015, started like any other Wednesday morning for the Dabate family. The boys, 9-year-old RJ and 6-year-old Connor, were preparing for school, excited about the Christmas holidays that would begin in just a few days. The house alarm system app only worked within 500 feet of the house. Almost immediately, someone tried to disarm the same alarm system using Richard's mobile phone. The attempt failed at first, but at 8:51 a.m., the system was successfully disarmed from the phone and then rearmed again. This sequence of events would prove critical. Later, it was shown that at 9:18 a.m., someone visited the YMCA website from Richard's computer. This suggested he might have been checking to see if Connie had actually gone to her class, or perhaps monitoring when she might return home. At 9:23 a.m., Connie's garage door opened as she returned home unexpectedly. Richard's phone pinged off cell towers near the house throughout the morning. This contradicts his claim that he was miles away at a bus depot in Broadston, where he was allegedly checking advertising displays. The discovery. When first responders arrived at 7 Beachview Drive, they found a scene that would haunt them forever. Richard was discovered on the kitchen floor, partially bound to a metal folding chair. Richard claimed that intruders demanded his credit card and PINs, which Richard claimed he'd provided. When Connie returned home early, Richard shouted for her to run. He claimed she had immediately run to the basement instead of escaping the house. The alleged intruder had followed her there. He had struggled with her and shot her twice with a gun Richard had purchased just 2 months earlier. Investigators found Connie's body. She had been shot twice with a .357 Magnum revolver, once in the back of the head and once in the stomach. It was a weapon that had never been fired before that day, and it bore no identifiable fingerprints. An ambulance was called. 2 showed up, one for Connie and the other for Richard. Richard told his story to law enforcement officers, but experienced investigators immediately noticed problems with Richard's story. It didn't make sense. There were no signs of forced entry. Nothing appeared to have been stolen anywhere in the house. In fact, money that should have attracted a burglar was left untouched. Most tellingly, 3 separate police K9 units brought to track the intruders all failed to pick up any trail leading away from the property. The first dog, Rocky, kept circling back to Richard and even tried to jump into the ambulance with him. The scene looked staged, and Richard's behavior seemed odd for someone who had just witnessed his wife's murder. It would take months of meticulous digital forensics to prove what investigators suspected from the very beginning, that Richard Dabate had killed his wife, and tried to make it look like a home invasion gone wrong. What Richard Dabate hadn't anticipated was how thoroughly modern technology would document every aspect of his deception. The Connecticut State Police Eastern District Major Crime Squad, working with prosecutor Matthew Dinsky, would conduct one of the most comprehensive digital forensics investigations. The device that Connie had pinned on her hip was a Fitbit tracker. Evidence shows that this kind of tracker, worn on the hip, is nearly perfect at measuring steps. In fact, it is 98% accurate for walking and jogging. The Fitbit data revealed the fatal flaws in Richard's timeline. He claimed Connie had been killed around 9:05 a.m., shortly after she returned home from the gym. But her Fitbit showed she was still actively moving around the house right until 10:05 a.m. This is a full hour later. During that time, the device recorded 1,217 feet of movement, which a cybersecurity professional and academic testified they were incidental, the kind you'd expect from someone doing normal household activities, not running for their life from an intruder. Despite his claims of being miles away at work, at 9:04 a.m., Richard had sent an email to his supervisor from the home computer claiming he was returning to check on a security alert. But phone data showed he was already at home when he sent that message, not driving from a bus depot 2 miles away as he claimed in his computer activity that morning. The evidence painted a picture of someone very much at home and very much aware of what was happening. Beyond the Facebook visits and Google searches, Richard's Microsoft account records showed multiple logins from the home IP address throughout the morning. The investigators also discovered that this time frame corresponds exactly with times when Richard claimed to be elsewhere. Richard's searches suggested the murder had been planned for months. This was not a crime of passion or a robbery gone wrong. But perhaps most heartbreaking was Connie's own digital trail. On her final morning, her Facebook activity showed she had no idea what was coming. At 8:58 a.m., she messaged her psychotherapist about feeling anxious. At 9:40 and 9:46 a.m., she posted cheerful videos to Facebook, appearing relaxed and content in every way. The digital and phone evidence was overwhelming, and it told a clear story. Richard Dabate had murdered his wife in their home sometime between 10 o'clock and 10:05 a.m. on December 23, 2015. Then chillingly, he staged an elaborate home invasion to cover his tracks. The phone data also revealed the extent of Richard's deception about his affair. He had been in constant contact with Sarah Ganzer. He had made 8 calls to her on the day of the murder alone. This included a 28-minute conversation that morning, something he had initially failed to mention to the police. When confronted with this overwhelming digital evidence, Richard's story began to crumble. He admitted to the affair and to lying about his whereabouts, but maintained his innocence regarding the murder. He claimed he had lied because he was terrified and trying to protect his reputation. But investigators had one more piece of damning evidence. After Connie's murder, Richard had behaved in ways that struck everyone as deeply inappropriate for a grieving widower. Just 5 days after his wife's death, he attempted to claim her $75,000 life insurance policy. In cases like these, especially in the USA, there always seems to be a life insurance policy at play. When the insurance policy payout was denied due to the ongoing investigation, he withdrew over $90,000 from Connie's investment accounts. Girls, keep your PIN a secret. Most shocking of all, by the time of his eventual conviction in 2022, Richard had depleted virtually all of Connie's estate money she had worked hard to save for their sons' futures. The boys' aunt testified that only $6.24 remained of their mother's savings, not even enough to buy a shirt, shoes, or a backpack. For nearly 18 months after Connie's murder, Richard Dabate maintained his innocence and lived as a free man while police painstakingly built their case. He continued his relationship with Sarah Ganzer, who gave birth to their daughter in February 2016. Less than 2 months after Connie's death. During this time, Richard's behavior continued to raise red flags among those who had known the couple. Richard pleaded not guilty to all charges and was released on $1 million bail. His family leveraged 5 homes as collateral to secure his freedom, which meant he could remain free for another 5 years while the case worked its way through the courts. As they waited for the trial to begin, the family watched in horror as Richard continued to spend Connie's money. He withdrew thousands from her accounts, supposedly for living expenses and legal fees, whilst her children, the rightful beneficiaries, were left out. First, the trial was set for March 2020, but was repeatedly delayed. First by the pandemic, then by Richard's attorney's death in 2021 and again in 2022 when a new jury had to be selected. Sarah Ganzer, meanwhile, had ended her romantic relationship with Richard but continued to co-parent their daughter. He killed for her, now she's gone. I wonder if he thought it was all worth it. Neighbors found it extremely weird that just days after his wife's murder, he was texting them asking about favorite takeout restaurants. His apparent lack of grief, combined with his immediate focus on financial matters, painted a picture of a man more concerned with covering his tracks than mourning his wife. Friends who had once supported Richard began to distance themselves. His best friend, Seth Robertson, described meeting with Richard several weeks after Connie's death, expecting to console a grieving widower. Instead, Robertson said Richard gave him a basic account of the murder that seemed rehearsed, then quickly moved on to talking about everyday things as if nothing had happened. Robertson testified, "I showed up with pockets of tissues. Richard is acting as if nothing ever happened." He said there was none of the sadness or anger he was expecting from someone who had just lost their wife. Meanwhile, Connie's family, while awaiting trial, was struggling to process their loss. The family was also growing increasingly suspicious of Richard. Connie's mother had noticed his strange behavior from the very beginning. She became concerned over his odd detachment when viewing Connie's body. He made an offhand comment when referring to her coffin that they should put the lid on it now. Richard Dabate's trial began on April 5, 2022. The prosecution presented over 600 pieces of evidence, with the Fitbit data proving Connie was alive for an hour after Richard claimed. The mistress, Sarah Gans's testimony, provided the crucial motive evidence. Fighting back tears, she described her 30-year relationship with Richard and how he had repeatedly promised to divorce Connie. She testified that she had never demanded he leave his wife, but had grown frustrated with his constant changes of heart. Her pregnancy had put enormous pressure on Richard. Sarah constantly pressured him to decide their future together. This pressure, the prosecution argued, had driven him to murder. In his closing arguments, prosecutor Matthew Gdinsky said Dabate hatched a plan to kill his wife and stage a home invasion as his life was about to unravel because of the affair with the other woman and her pregnancy. Dabate's version of the events was bolstered by unknown DNA found in the home. More than 100 people testified during the 5-week trial. Even at the sentencing, Richard maintained his innocence. "I am here as an innocent man," he said. "I will never stop seeking justice for my wife Connie, whom I love and think of every day." His words rang hollow to those who had heard months of evidence about his lies, his affair and his theft of his wife's estate. Guilty.
Attention because of evidence from his wife's Fitbit tracker. Dabate was found guilty of killing his wife Connie back in 2015 inside the couple's home in Ellington. Authorities say the data from Connie's Fitbit contradicted the statements Richard Dabate gave to police, claiming a masked intruder killed her.
On May 10, 2022, the jury found Richard Dabate guilty on all charges. The sentence revealed the devastating financial betrayal. Richard had spent virtually all of Connie's estate, leaving her sons with just $6.24. The judge sentenced him to 65 years in prison. Connie's brother, Keith Margotta, said the conviction brought relief. "It's a weight lifted off my shoulders, but it's bittersweet. Everything we went through 6 years ago is right in front of us right now." Connie's mother, Cindy Margotta, struggled to speak through tears as she described losing her youngest child. She said, "I feel this strength coming to me right now through all of us. She's here." The Connecticut Supreme Court upheld his conviction in January 2025, cementing this as a landmark precedent for fitness tracker evidence. Richard remains in McDougall Walker Correctional Institution, with a maximum release date of May 2, 2087. Richard's and Connie's 2 boys now live with their aunt. Out of kindness for the boys, the community Connie had served so generously established a college fund to help secure their future. This community support is certainly a testament to the woman they remembered as the sunshine of so many lives. Connie's true legacy lives on in those who knew her kindness. Her family wants her remembered not for how she died but for the light she carried in life. Her Fitbit was the silent witness that exposed her killer. In the end, it was Connie herself who helped bring her killer to justice. We pray for the repose of Connie's soul. May she rest in peace.